Imagine opening your eyes and realizing the world is no longer the same. The voices you hear aren't yours. The shadows move even when nothing is there. The person in the mirror stares back at you as if you're not yourself. Your mind begins to play tricks, twisting reality until it becomes a nightmare. Silence fills with whispers. Familiar faces deform into threats. The street turns into a maze, and your own home becomes a trap. Suddenly, you don't know if the enemy is outside or living inside your head. That is schizophrenia, a mind that turns into a battlefield. It's not a horror movie. It's not a nightmare that ends when you wake up. It's living every single day not knowing if what you feel, what you see, what you think is real or just a trap set by your own mind. Schizophrenia doesn't kill you all at once. It rips reality away from you piece by piece until you're trapped in a world that exists only inside of you. And the worst part? No one on the outside understands. To them, you're crazy. To you, madness is the only thing that seems to make sense. Schizophrenia is not just a mental illness. It is a brutal fracture between the mind and reality, an invisible cut that separates what exists from what only seems to exist. It's silence turned into screams, loneliness turned into persecution, and memories turned into enemies. We're not talking about strange ideas or someone just being confused. We're talking about a disorder that devours identity, that rips away the certainty of what is real and replaces it with a constant mirage. This video is not here to soften or romanticize schizophrenia. Here, you will see what it truly means. The hell of living trapped in a mind that no longer belongs to you. Get ready, because what you're about to hear is not fiction. It's the reality of millions of people around the world. A reality that could be much closer to you than you think. Schizophrenia begins with a crack, a silent fracture in the mind that, little by little, separates the person from reality. At first, it may seem small. A strange thought, a senseless suspicion, a distant murmur that shouldn't be there. But that crack grows. And when it does, it destroys everything it touches. For the one who suffers it, the ordinary starts to become uncertain. The sound of a car on the street is no longer just a car, it's a threat. The laughter of two people talking becomes a mockery aimed at you. The television no longer broadcasts shows, it sends hidden messages. The mind breaks, and with it, the trust in the most basic things breaks too. What you see, what you hear, what you think. Can you imagine living like this? Walking through your house and feeling someone watching you when no one is there. Having dinner with your family and being convinced that they're all conspiring against you. Lying in your bed and feeling that your own reflection is planning to hurt you. When the mind shatters, there is no safe refuge, not even within yourself. And the most brutal part is that the person can't tell what is real and what is a distortion. The brain creates an alternate world and presents it as absolute truth. A voice commands, "Don't trust anyone." A thought repeats, "They are watching you." And no matter how much you try to ignore it, that voice sounds as real as your own. Schizophrenia rips certainty out by the roots. The person no longer lives in the same world as everyone else. And in that moment, a journey with no return begins. The descent into an invisible hell where the real and the false merge until they become indistinguishable. This is the first impact of the illness, the rupture with reality. An abyss that separates the sufferer from everything they love, from everything they understand, from everything that once kept them standing. One of the cruelest faces of schizophrenia are the auditory hallucinations. Voices, whispers, commands, sounds that seem to come from outside but are born inside the mind. And the terrifying part is, you can't turn them off. There's no mute button, no pause, no escape. For those who don't live it, it's easy to say, just ignore them. But tell me, how do you ignore a voice that screams at you every day that you're worthless? How do you turn a deaf ear to a command that whispers for you to hurt yourself? These voices are not imaginary to the one who hears them. They're as real as if someone were speaking directly into their ear. Some insult without rest. You're trash. Everyone laughs at you. You're good for nothing. Others give dangerous orders. Break that, hit him, end your life. And the most perverse thing is that the person has no way of knowing whether they come from their mind or the outside world. These hallucinations destroy self-trust. Who can rely on their own mind when it turns into their executioner? The sufferer becomes a prisoner of an internal war, a battle between what their reason tries to hold on to and what those voices command without rest. But schizophrenia doesn't stop there. To the voices, delusions are added. Unshakable beliefs that don't respond to logic. Believing you're being followed. Believing everyone is conspiring against you. Believing the television is sending you secret messages. And even when evidence says otherwise, the sick mind feels it as absolute truth. Imagine trying to convince someone they're safe, when to them, every shadow, every sound, every word is a threat. You can't argue with a delusion. You can't reason with a voice that doesn't exist. This is how schizophrenia traps, by building an alternate world so convincing that for the sufferer, it is impossible to tell it apart from reality. A world where the enemy is always close and silence never comes. Schizophrenia doesn't just scream with voices that don't exist. It also silences what should be there. This is what's known as negative symptoms, the emotional blackout, the disconnection, the absence of life in the eyes. Imagine seeing someone you loved laugh out loud, and suddenly, they no longer react to anything. They don't smile. They don't cry. They show no affection. They're just there, sitting, breathing, but empty, as if their soul had been ripped out, leaving only a body behind. The sufferer begins to isolate. They stop talking, stop working, stop showering, stop eating with others. What once was part of daily life becomes an impossible effort, not because they don't want to, but because the illness robs them of energy, motivation, and connection with the world. It's an invisible prison. No bars, no locks, but the person is trapped inside a wall no one else can see. Outside, the family shouts their name, shakes them, begs them to wake up. Inside, the sufferer barely hears a distant echo, as if they were sinking into a pit with no way out. And society doesn't understand. They call them lazy, useless, irresponsible. But what no one sees is that schizophrenia is shutting them down from the inside, that every day is a battle just to get out of bed, to look someone in the eyes, to simply exist. That is the cruelty of the negative symptom. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't put on a show, it doesn't scare others, but it slowly kills the essence of a person and leaves them trapped in a prison with no bars, no escape, and no hope. Doesn't just imprison the one who suffers it. It also condemns them to face a constant trial by society, a cruel, shallow, and prejudiced trial. When someone hears the word schizophrenia, the first things that come to mind are danger, madness, violence. Cheap movies and sensationalist headlines have planted the idea that every schizophrenic is a potential killer. But that is a brutal lie. The truth is that most people with schizophrenia are not violent. On the contrary, they are victims of aggression, discrimination, and abandonment. Stigma is a second sentence. It's not enough to live trapped in a mind that's breaking. They also have to endure the rejection of a world that refuses to understand. The sufferer is pointed at in the street, excluded at work, avoided by friends and family. They become a social ghost, someone everyone sees, but no one truly wants to look at. And what fuels that fear? Ignorance. Lack of knowledge turns into rejection, and rejection turns into loneliness. Thus, schizophrenia doesn't just destroy the mind, it also rips away belonging, until the person is isolated in every sense. Social fear weighs just as much as the illness itself. Because while medications try to silence the inner voices, society shouts even louder, "You don't belong. You're not normal. We don't want you near us." That is the true danger of stigma. It turns the victim into the guilty one. It makes someone who desperately needs help end up with no one by their side. And it multiplies the pain of mental illness with the indifference of everyone who chooses to look away. Schizophrenia doesn't only destroy the person who suffers from it, it also drags the family down with it. Parents, siblings, children, all of them get trapped in the storm of an illness that no one asked for and no one knows how to handle. At first, it's all confusion. Why are they acting like this? Why are they saying those things? Why do they hear voices? The family searches for answers and finds cold diagnoses, doctors explaining in technical terms what at home feels like a daily earthquake. Over time, exhaustion sets in. Sleepless nights, making sure they don't hurt themselves. Arguments over the pills they refuse to take. The constant fear of what will happen if one day the situation spirals out of control. Each day, the family breaks a little more, torn between desperation, guilt, and helplessness. And the hardest part is the question that never leaves: what will happen when I'm no longer here? That fear haunts parents like a shadow, leaving their child alone, vulnerable, in a world that judges and abandons them. It's a pain that never rests, a burden that becomes unbearable. Many siblings feel invisible. All the attention goes to the sick family member, and they grow up with resentment, with silent wounds. Children who watch a parent lose themselves in their own mind, carrying traumas that will mark their entire lives. Schizophrenia is an illness that respects no bonds. It breaks homes, rips away trust, turns love into fear and affection into exhaustion. The family fights, resists, but little by little wears down like a rope fraying apart. In the end, they are all victims, the one who lives trapped inside their mind, and the family who lives trapped in the pain of watching them fade away with no way to stop it. Doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's not a divine punishment or just a whim of the mind. It's a storm forming in silence, deep inside the brain, until one day it explodes. Scientists talk about genetics, brain chemistry, childhood trauma, drug use, environmental factors. But in real life, all of that translates into one simple truth: no one is completely safe. You may carry the code in your genes, dormant, waiting for a trigger. A brutal stress, a loss, an extreme experience, and suddenly, the world breaks apart. It's a dark origin, because there's no single answer, there's no one culprit, there's no reason you can clearly point to. And that uncertainty weighs as heavily as the illness itself. Families ask themselves, was it my fault? Was it something I did? The patient repeats, why me? Why now? And the truth is, no one has a clear answer. The cruelest part is that schizophrenia doesn't discriminate. It can strike a young person with their whole life ahead of them, an adult in their prime, someone who seemed normal just yesterday. One day they're at college, at work, at dinner with friends, and the next they're hearing condemning voices, locked in a psychiatric ward. The dark origin of schizophrenia is exactly that, an uncertain ground, full of unanswered questions. But there is one thing that is certain. When it arrives, it destroys everything. It doesn't ask, it doesn't warn, it doesn't forgive. And it's in that emptiness of answers where fear grows. The fear of realizing that anyone could fall into that invisible abyss. Schizophrenia is not a permanent state of delirium. It's not being crazy 24 hours a day. That is the cruelest trick of the illness. It alternates moments of clarity with brutal plunges into darkness. There are days when the person seems fine. They talk, work, smile, share like anyone else. Those moments deceive the family and even themselves. Maybe they're cured. Maybe everything is back to normal. But suddenly, without warning, the psychotic episode strikes. The voices return, the paranoia intensifies, fear devours everything. It's like living on a tightrope. One step steady toward clarity, another into the abyss. They never know when the fall will come, or how deep the impact will be. That uncertainty is just as destructive as the symptoms themselves. The worst part is the distrust that settles inside them. How do you trust your own eyes, your own memories, if sometimes they're real and sometimes they're not? How do you know if the conversation you had yesterday actually happened, or if you only imagined it? The sufferer becomes both judge and executioner of their own mind, questioning every thought, every feeling, every memory. The family suffers that oscillation too. They live in constant alert, waiting for the next episode, knowing it could arrive at any moment. Today they have dinner together, tomorrow they might have to hospitalize them. That emotional back and forth is a silent punishment that wears everyone down. That's what schizophrenia is. It gives you a breath only to drown you harder. It lets you taste a moment of normality, just to remind you that you'll never fully have it again. It's living with the shadow of relapse breathing down your neck. It's walking between lucidity and darkness, never knowing on which side you'll wake up tomorrow. Schizophrenia erases the border between what is real and what is imagined. What for anyone else would be a fleeting thought, for the sufferer becomes an absolute certainty. A dream can feel like a memory can blend with a delusion, and a simple coincidence on the street can seem like a sign sent directly to them. Imagine turning on the television and believing the anchor is speaking to you, or hearing two people talk and being convinced they're plotting to harm you. That is the edge of the illness. Everything ambiguous is interpreted as a threat. Everything strange as a conspiracy. The sufferer lives in constant war against their own perception. The sound of the wind becomes a suspicious whisper. A text message can turn into proof of persecution. Every detail gets distorted until it builds a parallel universe, so convincing that it feels impossible to doubt it. That thin line with reality is the most dangerous part. Because if what you feel and what you see seem real, what do you have left to hold on to? How can you tell the true world apart from the nightmare your mind fabricates every second? Schizophrenia turns life into a broken puzzle. The pieces exist, but they never fit. And the person is trapped in a labyrinth where every exit is a wall and every answer is another question. This is how the illness doesn't just destroy trust in others, but also in oneself. Because what can you do when you can't even trust your own senses? When someone hears the diagnosis of schizophrenia, the first question is, can it be cured? And the answer is harsh. There is no definitive cure. The only thing that exists are treatments that try to control the symptoms, but at a very high price. Antipsychotics are the main tool. Medications that silence the voices, calm the delusions, and bring back a little stability. But that relief comes with invisible chains: extreme drowsiness, body stiffness, tremors, weight gain, loss of energy, inability to concentrate. Many feel they stop being themselves. The voices disappear, but so does the spark that once made them human. It's a cruel choice. Do you prefer to live trapped in the storm of your mind, or in an artificial calm that numbs you from the inside? Neither option is fair. And as if that weren't enough, treatments don't always work the same. Some patients improve, others sink deeper. Sometimes the pills silence the voices, but leave an emotional emptiness so deep it feels worse than the illness itself. Psychiatric hospitals become both refuge and prison, a place where they find care, but also where they feel stripped of freedom, labeled, cut off from the world. Therapy tries to build a bridge, but the path is never easy. It requires patience, discipline, trust, and often schizophrenia destroys all of that before it can be built. That's why, for many, treatment is not synonymous with hope, but with resistance. It's not a cure, it's a chain that allows them to survive one more day. And hidden in that survival lies the real tragedy: that life is reduced to just that, resisting, enduring, holding on, without the certainty of ever becoming who you once were. Schizophrenia is not just an illness, it is an internal war. a battlefield where the enemy is not outside, but inside you. Every day, the sufferer wakes up not knowing if they can trust what they see, what they hear, what they feel, and that uncertainty is a torture that slowly destroys the most sacred thing: trust in one's own mind. Life becomes surviving between two worlds: the world of everyone else, which continues its normal course, and the personal one, where everything is distorted, full of suspicion, voices, invisible threats. It's like living inside a broken mirror where the image never fits together again. But the most shocking thing is what schizophrenia reminds us all: that the mind is fragile, far more fragile than we want to believe. That today, you can be certain of your reality, and tomorrow, lose it without warning. The border between sanity and madness is so thin that anyone could cross it. Society must understand this. The sufferer is not a monster, not a threat, not a throwaway. They are a human being trapped in a fight no one sees, screaming for help that no one hears. Schizophrenia is a dark mirror that forces us to see how vulnerable we are. Because if we can't trust our own mind, what is left to trust? That is the question that must remain after this video. A question that unsettles, that hurts, that shakes. And maybe, just maybe, it will help us be less indifferent, less cruel, more human. This mental illness is not a horror story invented to scare. It's a reality that millions of people live every single day in silence, judged by a society that prefers to condemn rather than understand. Today it might seem like a distant, foreign, impossible world. But the truth is that no one is completely safe. The mind is fragile, and that fragility reminds us of how vulnerable we truly are. If this video opened your eyes, don't stop here. Talk about it. Break the silence. Challenge the stigma. Don't ignore those who are fighting against a mind that betrays them. Stigma is broken with knowledge, with empathy, with humanity. And now I want to ask you, have you ever felt like your own mind was working against you? Tell me in the comments. Your story might open someone else's eyes. If this content made you think, I invite you to subscribe, share this video, and keep exploring with me the darkest and most hidden truths of the human mind. Because this journey doesn't end here. It's only just beginning.